The message reached Meghan without warning. There had been no private call, no final negotiation, and no quiet opportunity to prepare. A formal palace notice, authorized by Prince William, declared that every remaining royal patronage associated with her name had been withdrawn. In a single decisive act, the future king had severed Meghan's last official connection to the institution she once believed she could transform. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Meghan sat motionless as the final paragraph settled over her. Harry watched her read it again before she turned the tablet face down. A royal patronage is an official link between a member of the monarchy and a charity or public organization, giving that cause status and symbolic support. Losing every remaining appointment meant more than losing names on paper. It meant the last proof of her place inside royal life had been cut away. Harry asked whether William had signed it himself. Meghan nodded, but no answer followed. Those dormant roles had survived years of distance, criticism, and family conflict. They had remained as a thin bridge between her past and the crown. Now even that bridge was gone. She felt humiliated, yet beneath the shock sat something colder. The knowledge that the decision had been timed so she could not stop it. At Windsor, William stood beside a long desk after placing his signature beneath the directive. He felt no triumph. The prince understood that Queen Elizabeth II had once trusted Meghan with those responsibilities, and ending them carried the weight of closing part of his grandmother's legacy. But he believed that allowing her name to appear on annual leadership lists would blur the line between historical service and current royal authority. To him, that confusion threatened the crown's credibility. The timing had been deliberate. Several organizations were hours away from publishing records, and William had acted before Meghan could be listed for another year. The notice offered no appeal, no review date, and no temporary suspension. A formal directive is a written order carrying institutional authority, and this one was designed to remain binding even after he became king. Inside the palace archive, a senior courtier unlocked the patronage register, removed Meghan's nameplate, and paused. Then he slid it into an envelope marked "Closed Appointment." Harry learned there was another file, one explaining why William believed the connection had become impossible. And as Meghan stared at the words that ended her royal role, the deeper wound was already opening. Because this decision was not only about patronages, but about the broken relationships behind them. Behind the cold wording of the palace notice stood three people carrying three very different versions of the same family history. Meghan saw rejection. Harry saw another attack on the life he had chosen. William saw a boundary that should have been drawn years earlier. None of them entered this conflict without pain, and none could escape the memories that made compromise almost impossible. Meghan leaned toward Harry and said the palace was trying to rewrite her life. The remaining patronages had never felt like empty labels to her. They were proof that her years inside the monarchy had created something lasting through work involving women, education, theater, and social opportunity. A patronage is an official bond between a royal figure and an organization, giving that cause public support and prestige. Losing those bonds meant losing the final public evidence that she had once served from within. Harry pushed back from the breakfast table and walked across the room. Then he returned, anger tightening his voice, and asked whether William had personally approved the decision. Meghan confirmed it. The answer cut deeper because his brother had once promised that private family pain would never be turned into public destruction. Now he felt trapped between defending his wife and mourning the bond he still wanted with the prince. At Windsor, William carried a different burden. The future king was preparing for a reign built on active service, loyalty, and accountability. To him, every name connected to the crown had to represent current duty, not distant history. Yet he had not ordered Meghan's work erased. He instructed archivists to preserve every completed project in the royal archives, the official collection that stores the monarchy's historical records. Her contribution would remain, her authority would not. Catherine had urged restraint before the directive was signed. In a private conversation recorded in a confidential household note, she warned William that humiliation could harden Harry's resentment beyond repair. She supported clarity, but not cruelty. Later, the prince sat alone with her handwritten suggestion beside the draft. He crossed out a harsher sentence and replaced it with a calmer declaration. Royal patronage required continuing service. That change softened the blow, but it could not remove the reason for it. Meghan still believed her history gave her a lasting claim. William believed the crown could not survive blurred lines. Catherine understood both positions, and that understanding made the silence around them even heavier. Few understood how quickly it would erupt. To understand why the future king finally closed the door, the story must return to the private ceremony, where Meghan's final royal connection became, in William's eyes, a direct threat to the crown. The break did not begin with the palace notice. It began months earlier, beneath the chandeliers of a private charity ceremony where Meghan's name appeared beside the royal cipher without authorization. What seemed like a minor branding dispute became the moment William could no longer ignore. One speech, one altered program, and one furious conversation transformed an old family wound into a constitutional line he was determined to defend. Confusion had been allowed to survive because no termination document had ever closed every dormant appointment. Several organizations described Meghan as their royal patron, partly from habit and partly because palace officials feared reopening the conflict with Harry. A royal cipher is the monarch's official lettered emblem, used to show direct connection to the crown. Under Charles, advisors permitted old references to remain only if she avoided presenting herself as an active royal representative. Then Toronto changed everything. At the Commonwealth Women's Achievement Ceremony, printed programs introduced Meghan as royal patron and global representative, with the cipher beneath her name. She walked to the lectern and thanked the audience for continuing the work we began under the crown. The words drew applause. But inside Windsor, they sounded like a claim of living authority, not a memory of service. William watched a private recording sent by a palace communications officer. The prince froze when the camera settled on the emblem, then asked who had approved it. An aide answered that no permission had been requested. He closed the laptop and said the ambiguity was no longer accidental. To him, the moment mattered because royal symbols carried the monarch's authority, and using them without approval could make private campaigns appear endorsed. The warning made the breach worse. 2 weeks earlier, the organization had received a written palace request, removing all current royal branding from Meghan's appearance. A documented email later confirmed the message had been acknowledged, yet the program remained unchanged. An event coordinator also stated in a recorded internal interview that her team had reviewed the wording before printing. Meghan had not created the title, but she had chosen not to remove it because she believed her historic role justified the reference. William summoned the Lord Chamberlain, the senior official who manages royal ceremonial and household matters, into a private office. He placed the program on the table, pointed to Meghan's name beneath the cipher, and said quietly, "This cannot happen again." The decision began there. But before he signed anything, she demanded a private meeting. The program had lit the fuse, but the explosion came behind closed doors when Meghan and William finally faced each other without cameras, speeches, or anyone willing to soften their words. There were no reporters in the room and no aides seated between them. Meghan entered, believing she could persuade William to preserve the patronages as recognition of work already completed. The prince arrived with the ceremony program inside a dark folder. Within minutes, the conversation stopped being about charities. It became a reckoning over loyalty, memory, and who had the right to define Meghan's place in royal history. Meghan had requested the meeting during a brief visit to Britain, and William agreed only if Harry, Catherine, lawyers, and communications staff remained outside. The Windsor reception room became neutral ground, but neither of them felt safe inside it. A working royal is someone who carries out official duties for the sovereign, and that definition sat at the center of the dispute. She argued that stripping the patronages would punish charities and bury years of real service. William listened without interrupting. Then he said past contribution could be honored without granting permanent authority over a living institution. Meghan asked whether this was truly about protocol or whether he had never forgiven her for leaving. Her voice stayed steady, but her hand tightened around the chair. The prince waited before answering, and the silence felt more brutal than anger. William opened the folder and placed the Toronto program between them. He said the crown could not be used as a symbol when convenient and condemned when inconvenient. Meghan heard more than criticism of one ceremony. She heard an attack on every decision she and Harry had made since leaving Britain, and her face hardened as the argument became personal. Meghan proposed a compromise. She would keep 2 patronages under a new category for former working royals, allowing the organizations to preserve continuity without claiming she represented the monarch. William rejected it. Such a category had never existed, and creating it would grant status without accountability to the sovereign, the person whose authority gives royal appointments their meaning. Meghan reminded him that Queen Elizabeth II had personally entrusted her with those roles. William replied that the Queen had given them to a working member of the family, not to an independent public figure living abroad. She stood, pushed back her chair, and said one signature could not erase what she had achieved. He remained seated. It does not erase the work, it ends the authority. Meghan left without agreement, unaware that a confidential ruling had already strengthened his power to act. Outside, Harry waited beside Catherine, while she warned him the meeting might fail. When the door closed behind Meghan, the emotional battle was over, but the machinery of royal authority had already begun moving beyond anything she could negotiate. William did not act on anger alone. Hidden behind the confrontation was a sealed legal review examining every patronage Meghan had once held, every promise made during her departure, and every loophole left unresolved. Its conclusion was devastatingly simple. The future king possessed the authority to end the appointments immediately. Yet the most important moment came not in a courtroom, but when Charles silently handed control to his son. Charles sat alone with the file after the meeting ended. A sealed legal review is a confidential document prepared by royal lawyers to explain what powers the crown can lawfully use. This one concluded that patronages existed only through the sovereign's approval. They were positions of service, not private possessions, and they could be reassigned when someone no longer performed duties for the monarchy. The king removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He feared that ending Meghan's final roles would drive Harry further away, turning another institutional decision into a wound between father and son. In a documented account, prepared by his private secretary, Charles admitted that every choice involving the crown now felt like a judgment against his younger child. William faced him without satisfaction. The prince said leaving the confusion untouched would be easier for the family, but more dangerous for the monarchy. Organizations were still using old titles because no single instrument had formally closed every appointment. A dormant patronage means a role that is inactive but not officially terminated, and that loophole allowed historic descriptions to survive without clear limits. Charles understood why it mattered. The next annual appointments list would shape the public structure of royal service, and unresolved names could suggest that Meghan still spoke with palace authority. He authorized William to complete the review because those charities would eventually fall under the future king's oversight. The decision would therefore carry both present and future force. The king signed a confidential authorization, granting his son power to close the dormant roles and reassign the organizations. He slid it across the table. William did not touch it immediately. Father and son sat in silence, each knowing Harry might read the signature as betrayal rather than duty. At last, the prince placed his hand over the page. That gesture ended the uncertainty. Charles had transferred control, and William had accepted the cost. Before dawn, palace officials prepared calls to every affected organization. What had remained hidden inside legal files was about to become painfully public, and no family apology could reverse what followed next. The signatures were dry, the authority was settled, and by the next morning, the first charities were already being told that Meghan's royal chapter had officially ended. Write a detailed script based on the outline provided for a royal monarchy documentary, using a bold, dramatic, and immersive storytelling approach. Tone and style: bold, cinematic, and suspenseful throughout. Narrative-driven, mystery, foreshadowing, emotional highs and lows. Never dry or biographical in style. No visual descriptions or scene directions. Mix short and long sentences to control pacing and enhance drama. Character rule: every major character introduced in a section must appear at least twice within that section. Never introduce a character and abandon them before the section ends. Name repetition rule. Never use a character's full name or title more than once per paragraph. After the first mention, replace with pronouns or descriptive alternatives. For royal figures, use variations such as the Queen, she, her, the monarch, William, the prince, he, the future king, Sophie, she, the trusted confidant, Camilla, she, the queen consort, Charles, he, the king, the monarch. This rule applies to every character across every section, without exception. Sourcing rule. When a character reveals or breaks silence, always specify how. A private interview, a documented account, a recorded conversation, even if fictional. Never leave a revelation sourceless. Terminology rule. When any royal title, document, ceremony, or institutional term appears for the first time, include one plain language explanation before continuing. Never assume audience familiarity with royal terminology. Critical terminology placement rule. Never place a terminology explanation in the first 3 sentences of any section. The opening must establish emotion and momentum first. Terminology explanations belong inside paragraph 2 or later, embedded naturally within context, never as an interruption to the dramatic opening. Wrong approach. It was a declaration that shook the monarchy. The future royal order meant the planned structure of roles and titles. Nothing would ever be the same. Correct approach. It was a declaration that shook the monarchy. Nothing would ever be the same. Charles understood what the future royal order, the planned structure of roles and titles defining the monarchy's next chapter, truly meant for everyone in that room. Context rule. Every section must contain at least 2 grounding details explaining why the moment matters, not just that it matters. Emotional stakes must be clear. Paragraph opening rule. No paragraph may open with a passive or explanatory construction. Every paragraph must begin with either a character in action or feeling something, a short, punchy statement of consequence, a sensory or atmospheric detail that creates immediate tension. Wrong openings. A private palace briefing was supposed to be controlled, and that mattered because briefings are where the situation had developed over time, and it was important to understand. Royal tradition dictated that. Correct openings. Charles knew every person in that room understood the weight of what was coming. The closed door changed everything. Camilla did not move. She did not speak. Engagement rules. Use cliffhangers and foreshadowing to build suspense. No standalone endings. Every section must flow naturally into the next. Use bold dramatic phrasing at key moments. Contrast success with suffering where relevant to deepen emotional impact. Language. Simple but powerful word choices. Conversational and immersive tone. Never formal, academic, or stiff. Vivid through word choice alone. Never through visual instructions. Format. Paragraph format only. No bullet points. No headers. No numbered lists in output. No outline headings in the final script. Follow the exact word count specified in the outline for each section. Do not reset tone between sections. Carry narrative momentum forward. Each section must feel like a continuation, never a fresh start. Insert outline here. Please add this line at the end of this script. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one. Section 9. The seat was never about Camilla alone. Word count. 440 words. Tone and style. Definitive, emotional, reflective and powerful. Delivering complete closure without unresolved tension. Hook. That evening, the procession cards were collected, the ceremonial uniforms were removed, and the palace corridors grew quiet again. Yet nobody believed the day could simply be filed away as another state opening. Catherine had taken Camilla's former seat, but she had refused to turn the moment into revenge. The change had exposed a painful truth, tested a marriage, challenged a future king, and forced the monarchy to decide whether continuity could be acknowledged without cruelty. Key points. Charles gathers William, Catherine, and Camilla in the same room where the confrontation occurred. This time, the revised procession card rests at the center of the table, but nobody argues over it. The king tells them the placement was not intended to remove Camilla from his reign. It was intended to recognize that William and Catherine must now be seen carrying responsibilities that cannot remain hidden until the next accession. He acknowledges that he allowed ceremonial uncertainty to become personal conflict. Turning toward his wife, Charles admits that his silence during the earlier confrontation caused more pain than the schedule itself. Camilla accepts that the monarchy's future cannot be delayed to protect her position. She does not reclaim the seat, but she asks that future adjustments be discussed honestly, rather than presented as completed decisions. Catherine states that she will accept the duties required of her, but she will not participate in creating public humiliation for another member of the family. William looks at her with visible pride, understanding that she secured authority through restraint rather than triumph. Charles confirms that the new formation will remain the preferred arrangement for future state openings involving the Prince and Princess of Wales. The decision is final, clear, and no longer treated as a temporary exception. Camilla lifts the procession card, studies Catherine's name, and places it back on the table without anger. She tells her, "Then carry it well." Catherine answers, "I will carry it carefully." The emotional verdict is unmistakable. Catherine did not take the seat because Camilla had become worthless. She took it because the monarchy had reached the moment when its future could no longer remain one step behind its present. The state opening therefore becomes a completed transfer of visibility, not of the crown itself. Charles remains sovereign, Camilla remains beside him, but William and Catherine are publicly recognized as the pair who must sustain what comes next. The family leaves the room without another confrontation. The chair remains where it was placed, the order remains unchanged, and the monarchy moves forward with its hierarchy finally understood. Transition line. Catherine entered the procession as the woman taking Camilla's seat, but she left it as something far more consequential, the recognized guardian of the monarchy's next chapter. The turning point did not come from a lawyer, a palace statement, or another furious call between brothers. It came in a private room with no institutional buffer, where Meghan sat opposite a woman who had also survived the pressures of royal life. For the first time since the notice arrived, she was asked not what the palace had taken from her, but what she wanted her life to become next. Sophie had contacted Meghan privately during a discreet stop in New York. They met in a hotel sitting room without aides, lawyers, recording devices, or members of either household. A working royal is someone who carries out official duties for the sovereign, and the trusted confidant understood both the privilege and the pressure that came with that role. She did not defend every palace decision. She simply explained that patronage could not remain attached forever to someone outside the system. Meghan listened, then admitted what the loss truly meant. She said it felt like proof that the family had never valued her contribution. Her anger softened as she remembered young women, students, and performers who had once told her that seeing her inside the monarchy made them feel represented. Those memories mattered because they were not ceremonial. They had shaped real lives, and losing the titles made her fear that the meaning of that work would disappear too. Sophie leaned forward and separated service from status. She told Meghan that the good created through those relationships had never depended on a title alone. Fighting to keep symbolic appointments, she warned, might trap her forever inside the institution she had chosen to leave. Then she offered a private assurance, recorded later in a confidential household account. William had ordered every completed project to remain credited to Meghan in the royal archives, the official collection preserving the monarchy's historical record. Meghan looked down at the aggressive statement waiting on her phone. She deleted it, placed the device on the table, and began writing a shorter message, thanking the organizations she had served. She confirmed that she would continue supporting similar causes independently. Then she asked whether William would ever see her as anything other than a threat. Sophie answered, "Not while every memory becomes a battlefield." For the first time, both women understood that dignity might demand surrendering symbol, while protecting the purpose that had survived beneath it. The palace would be surprised by her restraint. The public, however, was already choosing sides. Meghan had chosen not to ignite another public war, yet beyond the private room the world had already turned William's decision into a referendum on loyalty, cruelty, and the future of the monarchy. By sunrise, the palace decision had escaped the walls of Windsor and become a national argument. Some saw a future king defending the integrity of royal service. Others saw Meghan being punished long after leaving Britain. The debate grew louder with every broadcast, but one front page and one gathering outside Buckingham Palace captured the emotional divide more powerfully than any official explanation could. William watched the coverage from Kensington Palace as broadcasters described the directive as his most decisive act of institutional leadership. A directive is a formal order carrying official authority, and commentators stressed that Charles had approved it in writing. That detail mattered because it showed the prince had not challenged the king. He had acted with the monarch's permission, giving the decision the force of both the present reign and the future one. The argument split almost instantly. Supporters said royal patronages demanded active service and could never become private honors held for life. Critics accused the palace of punishing Meghan long after her departure and refusing to let old wounds heal. William heard one commentator call the move cold and vindictive. He switched off the television, but the words stayed with him. The future king had gained clarity for the crown while exposing the family's pain to millions. Meghan faced a different storm. Messages arrived from former charity workers thanking her for the years she had given them. One note came from a young actress who wrote that Meghan's first theater visit had inspired her to apply to drama school. She read it twice and became emotional because the message proved her impact had survived even after the title disappeared. Then the London Herald published the image that defined the day: an empty ceremonial chair beneath the headline, "The Last Royal Door Closes." Outside Buckingham Palace, two small crowds gathered on opposite sides of the gates. One raised signs declaring, "Service means duty." The other placed white flowers beside a photograph of Meghan visiting a women's shelter. An evening broadcaster interviewed a former patronage volunteer in a recorded segment. She said, "She may no longer carry the royal name here, but the people she helped will remember that she came." The clip spread quickly and softened the harshest arguments. As the noise began to fade, William and Meghan faced the same truth. Neither could change what had happened. Both still had to decide what it would mean. That decision would define the final meaning of their separation. When the headlines were folded away and the crowds finally left the palace gates, only the verdict remained: what had truly been lost, what had been protected, and who each of them had become. The removal of Meghan's final patronages was not a victory celebration, nor was it the sudden destruction of everything she had achieved. It was the formal ending of a relationship that had remained unresolved for too long. William protected the boundaries of the monarchy he will one day lead. Meghan lost her final official connection to royal life. Both paid an emotional price, but the uncertainty was finally over. Meghan accepted the separation without pretending it did not hurt. A royal patronage is an official responsibility carried on behalf of the sovereign, linking a royal to a charity or cause. William's directive confirmed that historic service could remain honored, but present authority could not stay attached to someone operating independently from the crown. The monarchy needed clarity, while the organizations needed leaders who could serve directly. Meghan wrote personal letters to the groups she had once represented. She thanked their staff, praised their work, and confirmed that she would not challenge the appointment of new patrons. Her completed projects would remain documented in the royal archives, the official collection preserving the monarchy's records. But every active title, ceremonial privilege, and claim of continuing representation was permanently closed. She sealed the envelope slowly, knowing dignity now required acceptance. William read her restrained message alone at Windsor. The prince felt relief that she had not attacked the palace, yet sadness followed immediately. Formal documents had replaced trust. Legal language had replaced family conversation. When the patronage register was carried into the archive, he watched it disappear behind a locked door and understood that institutional order had come at a personal cost. Harry remained angry, but he chose not to retaliate. In a recorded conversation with Meghan, he admitted that another campaign against his brother would turn her charitable legacy into ammunition. She agreed. Their silence was not surrender, it was a final refusal to let the conflict consume everything they had built beyond royal life. The organizations moved forward under new representatives. Their missions survived because the causes were always larger than the people attached to them. William had ended Meghan's institutional royal identity, but he had not erased her history or impact. The crown gained clarity. She gained freedom from an unresolved role. The family accepted that they could no longer share authority, even though they would always share a past. The crown had drawn its final boundary. Meghan had chosen to step beyond it with dignity, and the chapter that had divided a family and unsettled a monarchy was finally, unmistakably closed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.